Well, here we are at long last. It's June. We're back. We have CFL coverage. Everybody every week reads. We love the UFL. We want the CFL. We are here live Thursday, June 6th. We are getting ready for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers to be hosting the Montreal Alouettes here. Coming up here shortly, huge panel of guests standing by. We'll bring them all in and then kind of preface the show and everything else. If you like the work that we're doing, like and subscribe. We'll plug the other channels when those people come on. We just gave off 2 tickets to the UFL Championship game, which is happening next weekend. We're going to do season tickets next year for the UFL. So if you like the CFL work here, the UFL work, like and subscribe. We've given away Doug Flutie jerseys. We've given away alternative football, all sorts of stuff. So like and subscribe, and we'll plug everyone else's channels. But, long season. I think we'll do weekly recaps here. We'll figure out all that stuff. But make sure you're subscribed and turn on notifications. We'll get to all of that here. Let's bring in, I think Andrew Murray is standing. We'll get him on here in a minute as well. But look at this cavalcade of guests. First off, let's introduce the gentleman underneath me, since they're both unmuted. We have Tim and Cliffy here of the Alouettes Flighdeck podcast, which only makes sense. Tim, I wanted to make sure you show off your shirt again, but it only makes sense here. The reigning Grey Cup champions here. How are you guys doing? Tim, let's start.
There, all right, hold on.
It's a hot shirt. Now, did you make that? Is that an Alouettes Flighdeck?
That's ours. That's our own merch.
I might need to get up on that. I might need to get on that. Tim and Cliffy, have you been walking on top of the world here for the last 6 months in the off season?
Listen, it doesn't suck knowing that your team basically won the Grey Cup, and in such dramatic fashion too, when literally everybody and their mother didn't give this team a snowball's chance in hell. It's absolutely outstanding.
Tim, how do you feel about that? Tim, I certainly feel better about your Alouettes than I do the Arena Football League here. But
yeah, I do too. I mean, it's it was a long time coming for the city of Montreal, 13 years. It was just great to be able to experience it live in Hamilton, and it's just, as we said a couple of weeks ago, yes, we are the defending Grey Cup champions, but it is now a new chapter. 2024 is a new chapter, and the goal is to win the Grey Cup again.
Well, I want to get into that because pressure's on a couple of these teams, including the Lions here. Evan, one of the assistant directors of player personnel for the IFL's Vegas Nighthawks, as well as everything else he does. Evan, how are you doing, sir?
Good, man. Yeah, excited for the CFL season to start up. It's especially exciting. We got a couple IFL players up in the CFL right now. Corey Woodruff, who played with us, is with BC on their practice roster, and couple more guys over in Edmonton, Cordell Jackson and Germanic Smith on their practice roster. So excited to see what those guys do and get into the games and, watch all the action.
Yeah, no, Evan's like a real life football person now. So it's different. A couple of years ago, we'd have Evan on and it was like, oh, Evan. And now it's like Evan's like actually recruiting players and stuff, which is tremendously exciting. Jason over with Hussey Huddle. I think the last time we've spoken, but the last time we broadcast was the schedule release, right? Or free agency. How are we doing, Jason?
Yeah. I'm doing well, Reed. Thanks as always for having me, and just ready to get the CFL season underway.
So I guess my first question is, and we'll get into with season preview, kind of all that stuff. Pressure this season. Obviously, Alouettes repeating all of that stuff. But here, it seems like the carpet's rolled out for the Lions. We've got Milt Stiegel on talking about, the BC Lions are going to win the Grey Cup, kind of all that stuff. Tim, who has more pressure this year, Cody and the Alouettes or Vernon Adams? Because I feel like a lot of people are picking, like Andy was sharing 3 downs, picking Vernon as the the MVP, MOP of the league. Like, Tim, where is the pressure lie this season?
Well, I think especially when you talk about VA, VA got out of Montreal for a reason. It was on his own accord. He wanted to be able to get to a place where he felt that he could play, and he's thrived. He's thrived in BC. I think it's just a matter of, does VA have any demons that he needs to get rid of? He would like to win a cup. He's brought in a few of his former Alouette buddies who are now playing on with him on the roster. I don't know if and when it comes to Cody, I don't know if he was able to exercise the demons from Saskatchewan. He seems to have a great coaching staff behind him. We have some great wide receivers and other guys that are supporting Cody. It's really interesting. If I were to say, if there was somebody who had more pressure on them, I would probably say VA, because they're hosting the Grey Cup this year.
Well, and that was the thing last year is I was always kind of anxiously waiting for the wheels to fall off with VA, which they never really did, right? Cliffy, for you, Alouettes here, have we reloaded going into the season? How are you feeling just roster-wise, and have they done enough to kind of, hope to repeat or at least make it to the big game?
I think the big thing is they were able to maintain that core nucleus that helped win the Grey Cup. I mean, you got a couple pieces left via free agency or tried their luck in the NFL, but most of the main players, if you will, are still with this team. And the additions they've been able to make in free agency, it's been seamless. Like Isaac Berglund, Derek Wigan, they've been able to step in, and they, at least in training camp and preseason, looked fantastic. I think there's concern, obviously, because, there is a little bit of pressure to think, okay, was this a fluke? Were they just lucky? Did they just have a really good day against Winnipeg Blue Bombers, who arguably are still the class of the CFL? I think there's a little bit of pressure on Cody and the Alouettes to prove that, no, it wasn't a fluke. We are who we say they are. Or we are who we say we are, I should say. But, I look at Vernon, and he wants it so bad. He wants to be a winner so bad. Ever since he's come into this league, he's wanted to prove that he belongs. And now he's finally come into his own in BC, and I couldn't be happier for him because he was one of our day one guys when he first came to Montreal. And we even said to him, like, no matter where you go, we're going to be rooting for you. I mean, even if you're playing the Alouettes, we're still going to be rooting for you because of who you are as a person. And I'm thrilled for VA. I couldn't be happier for him being in the situation that he's in right now with BC Lions. And honestly, I wouldn't be mad at all to see BC versus Montreal in the Grey Cup in Vancouver this year.
I think that would all, I think at least for the show here and the friends of the show, that would all be the ideal matchup. And we have a long time to get to that here, but obviously you would hope that BC is in that, or at least competing for it. Evan, we were there, at Grey Cup and everything. Now, bird's eye view here, how many months after, do you view it as that the Alouettes kind of eked out? Because obviously they played dominant all year, but you got Cody, you got that final drive, humans and the way the world works, and that there's a million different possibilities of how that ended. It ended up with him throwing the touchdown pass and all of that, right? 2 feet different, whatever, right? He's not looked at the same now as a Grey Cup legend, kind of all that stuff. How do you view the Alouettes win in retrospect now going into the season? And I see Andy's trying to get logged in here, so we'll get him on here as well.
Yeah, it's still impressive, and we'll get into the Winnipeg side of things later, but I think there's more pressure on BC this year just because, a lot of people think that maybe Winnipeg isn't going to go to a fifth straight Grey Cup. So, we'll see what happens. I think the expectations for Montreal are still reasonably high. Again, I'd put BC much higher because they're hosting and a whole slew of other things. But I don't think Montreal is a team that's going to fall off. I think they've, got enough talent. We'll see if it'll be enough, to get through, some of those teams, whether it's East or West. There's a lot of question marks right now. Like, we'll see how Toronto does. That's really, I think, the strongest competitor against Montreal in the East, and they were last year. And of course, we all remember in the East final, we still think about that game a lot, I think. But yeah, I wouldn't expect Montreal to, just again, fall off the face of the earth and we don't hear from them. I think looking at their roster, which again, we'll get into more of that stuff later, and maybe that's more of my area of expertise. But I think they've got enough, to make another run here. And whether it's all the way to the Grey Cup or maybe just to the playoffs, we have to see. There's a very long season ahead of us. I remember we did all those, recaps starting last season before I ended up working in football. And, that felt like a properly long season. So a lot can change between now and when we're in Vancouver and whatever it is, November.
Let's get the Hussey's thoughts, and then we'll get Andy in here. Just, now pressure going on. Kind of, you've heard the question I'm asking, but just pressure on Montreal here, and have they done enough? And did you view that as a fluke last season?
Well, at the time, it was certainly surprising that Montreal went on this run. I think that if you were looking at it like before the playoffs, they probably would have been the fourth team you would have picked to win the Grey Cup. But ultimately, that's the way it works sometimes in the CFL. The upsets are quite plentiful. And I think that, with the Alouettes, in terms of whether or not it was a fluke, I don't think it was a fluke, but rather just like an all-time heater that I saw from that defense. I thought that defense just really carried them for a lot of that like stretch down the stretch. What did they win? Like 6 games in a row to end the regular season, and then win the 3 playoff games. So I don't know if they'll able to get are going to be able to get that hot again defensively. But they brought back a lot of those key pieces, as Cliff and Tim said. But I think that the big question for me is that is Cody Fajardo going to have a bigger season this year than he did last year? Because you look at his statistics last year, very modest, but you look at that Grey Cup game, he really did play like a true MOP level quarterback in that game. So does that confidence really show out this season for him?
Jason,
let's bring up-
eight
I'll go for
straight,
it.
Jason. 8 straight.
I stand corrected.
Let's bring on here the professor, actually professoring today. Here we have Andrew Murray here, coming from school. Andy, how the heck are you? And then I got these pick'ems here I want to go through because I think this gives us a good sense of the season. But how are you doing, sir?
Yeah, for once I actually fulfill my namesake, right? I'm actually doing the thing. This is not just some moniker that I have online. I actually do this for a living, but I'm great. How are all of you doing? This is quite the room we have here.
It's good. It's good here. Jenna's checking in here. Good afternoon from Southern California. We got Pat here. Pat and I just got done previewing the UFL playoffs. That'll be up tomorrow. So Pat, a double dose of read here. Andy, I want to get your thoughts on this because I think this will give us a good sense of kind of where at least the I wouldn't say like the casuals land at this point, but we're looking at the pick'ems here, kind of split 50-50 here tonight for the CFL.ca crew. This BC at Toronto, and I know that Chad Kelly and we've talked ad nauseum about all of that stuff, but are you surprised BC favored as much as they are in Toronto, Andy?
I'm not, because most people have pegged them to be either at the Grey Cup or Grey Cup champions, and also a lot of people have filled out their ballots or at least their preseason ballots as far as who the MOP is going to be. And a lot of people believe that's going to be Burnham Adams Jr. So this to me speaks to more being a season-long aspirational pick, but there are 18 games. These are all individualized matchups. And I think this is interesting because if we all remember last year, the Argos weren't even favored at home against Hamilton, and they absolutely trounced the Ticats and took Bo Levi Mitchell behind the woodshed. And so for me, I think it's a bit of a dangerous game to play, the idea of assuming that just because this team is going to potentially be in the title game or win a title doesn't mean that they're going to be coming out firing on all cylinders week 1. I think that's an aspirational thing to think. I don't necessarily think that's going to be the case. I do believe in VC as a long-term prospect, but I think there's a reason why Ryan Dinwiddie has won at home several times in a row with several different quarterbacks. I mean, he's won at home. He's won 3 straight home openers with 3 different quarterbacks: McLeod Bethel-Thompson, Nick Arbuckle, and Chad Kelly. And now he's doing it with his 4th with Cameron Duke. So look, he's a great coach. He has his team usually pretty well ready to play, especially at home at BMO Field. I understand why the panel goes that way, because again, they're trying to factor in that, well, I picked this team to win this entire season. This is why I'm picking them now. But again, like I said, these individual games you have to be careful with in choosing these matchups, because it's hard for me to really bet against Toronto, even with Chad Kelly not being there. I have a lot of faith in someone like Ryan Dinwiddie.
We got Mark Brendan here giving the super chat. I appreciate that, Mark. Yeah, Tim, any cause, any of these give you cause for concern here? I mean, obviously, I would say, at least to me, outsider, a coin flip tonight, right? That kind of makes sense with Winnipeg. We got to see how Montreal comes out of the gate. I guess we'll go first. Tim, anything stand out to you from any of these?
No, and I'm not really surprised about how people are picking BC over Toronto, because, obviously with Chad Kelly not there, that's the big elephant in the room for the team, mostly, at least for the first 9 weeks, if that's how long he's going to, if it's going to be 9 or longer, depending on what happens. But I'm not surprised there. I guess, I guess maybe, I don't know, BC, it's still, but BC coming over to the East and getting the sweeps across the board. That's actually very interesting. But yeah, a lot of these matchups, to be honest with you, I'm intrigued with the Elks matchup. I'm curious to see what this team's going to do. And obviously you have the new head coach in Saskatchewan. So yeah, I don't really have an issue with them. I just have an issue with the 3 people who chose Winnipeg to beat Montreal. So
Yeah. No, that's funny. I guess my concern, and Evan, maybe get your thoughts on this. I felt like last year we saw BC really get kind of high on their own supply. I think a little bit. I think they were a little too into the Donut Boys, and I think they rode that media wave a little bit and got humbled. We saw a couple of those games that they definitely should have won coming down to the season. You're not talking like getting into the playoffs, but there was like that Hamilton loss, I think, at home they had. Evan, are you worried about that with BC? Like, we have all this pressure this year. We got to be there. We've got 50 Cent we're selling out, and we've got Jonas Brothers we're selling out. Like, this is like of any season since we've covered the league. I mean, the most heat is going on the Lions going into this. Are you worried about that?
I mean, I feel like they've built their team well enough that they can handle a lot of the pressure. I think they've got a lot of continuity now that some of these teams don't have. I mean, again, they're getting up there, maybe not in Winnipeg territory because they obviously don't have the Grey Cups to show for it. I mean, Winnipeg is a borderline dynasty with what they've done going back to, I guess, 2019. But I don't feel, I don't feel too worried about them. I will say it's a bit interesting that it's a clean sweep in those picks, BC at Toronto. If you're going to give me another chance to plug the Indoor Football League, Toronto's got a new starting quarterback, Cameron Dukes, who also used to play for us in our inaugural season back before I worked there. But the reason I didn't mention his name before was because, he was already in Toronto last year, and started a couple games and showed some flashes, and they feel confident enough, to go with him this year. So that's a big step for us. And, I'm not saying, I'd maybe still pick BC in that game overall, but, that pick, a clean sweep for BC, I don't know, maybe that in itself might be putting a bit too much pressure on them for week one. And I don't think we can count out Toronto that easily, even if they're missing Chad Kelly.
Let's get Cliffy's thoughts on that. I want to get to Jason here. I know his time is a little short today. Cliffy, what do you think of the kind of anything stand out from you? Because I always just view this, and not that, I love Jamie and all these guys. Jamie's like vacationing in France. Like, I don't know how much preseason football Jamie and I. I'm kidding, but but I just think this is a good, hey, not casual, but this is kind of the generic view of kind of all this stuff right now. Cliffy, anything stand out to you?
For me, it's the Hamilton-Calgary game. That's going to be interesting for a couple of reasons. One, because it's Bo Levi Mitchell's return to Calgary since he left. He was actually technically was traded to Hamilton.
Yeah,
but this will be his first chance to be able to go back to McMahon Stadium, where he arguably had all of his success as a member of the Canadian Football League. But both these two teams I think a lot of people are kind of picking them to be the bottom feeders this year. Like, this is the year where Calgary finally misses the playoffs, and Hamilton they're going to go as far as what Bo Levi is going to take them. And if he gets knocked out again, is Taylor Powell going to be the guy that's going to step up? Like, he showed some flashes of brilliance last year, but it's still he was still in tough as far as being the quarterback and potential future of this franchise. So I look at this Hamilton-Calgary game, and I think it could be a lot of fun, but at the same time, we could see a lot of different things happen here. And I'm definitely intrigued by that matchup. For Saskatchewan and Edmonton, that's going to be interesting too, if only because Edmonton has to start the game a little bit earlier because of the Stanley Cup finals. And when I look at BC, Toronto, you got BC flying all the way out to Toronto. Last time Vernon Adams played in Toronto, it did not go very well for him.
Yeah.
But the Argos, I'm curious to see how Cameron Dukes is going to rise to the challenge. And he's also got Nick Arbuckle backing up as well. Someone who is familiar with the Argos system. So, quarterback-wise, I think they'll be okay. But once again, it's going to be a bit of a dogfight for those guys as well.
Jason, your thoughts on this? And you're obviously our resident Hamilton expert in all things, kind of Bo Levi at this point and everything. But I'm intrigued by that matchup as well. We had Ryan Ballantyne on, was it last week or the week before talking? And, obviously we've had injuries from Malik Henry and all of that for the wide receivers there, right? Is Schultz the backup now in Calgary, right? What's going on? Like, what do you thoughts on it? I'm trying to keep on this track here, but thoughts on Hamilton and especially Calgary, because I can't get a read. Like, I was asking Ryan, obviously there should be pressure on them, but they made the playoffs, even though they didn't, they kind of limped into the playoffs, but you made a playoff team. Like, I never know, do you have pressure on this season? I would think Calgary would want to perform better than that. But what do you think of Hamilton and then the Calgary matchup?
Well, it's interesting because I think both of these teams obviously coming off very disappointing seasons last year. Hamilton notoriously are slow starters. I think the last 2 years they both started 0-3 each season. So getting a win for either of these teams is going to be key. I think in Calgary as well had a slow start last season and ultimately was able to just barely scrape enough wins together to make the playoffs. And I think that it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with those two teams, because they're playing each other. One of these teams gets a chance to get off on the right foot. And I think that, in terms of my personal expectations for the Ticats this year, they're pretty low, honestly, because they brought back Bo Levi Mitchell. That's something I definitely did not expect. I've said that on this podcast, going back to after the season that we had that podcast. And I think that, because I don't believe in Bo Levi Mitchell as a starting quarterback anymore, I just don't believe that he has what it takes to take this team to any sort of level of success. So let alone stay healthy. So I think that's going to be a big thing as well. And for Calgary, I think that the Malik Henry injury was absolutely huge. I think that he's really their field stretcher. And I think that without him, as you saw last year, there's just too much of an onus put on Reggie Bagleton. And, Bagleton's just not the same downfield threat that Malik Henry was. So I think at the end of the day, it's going to be very hard for both of these teams to, get it going this season. And I think that a lot of people are justifiably so picking them to be the bottom of the standings this season.
I'm pretty proud of predicting that. I don't think it was that big of a stretch that Bo Levi would be duty and that this would be a failed experiment for Hamilton.
Aaron Rodgers too.
I feel well, and look how that panned out. We're rolling it back again, but I thought that, and there's a reason why I trust, the brain trusted Calgary, and they sat there and they said, it's the same thing with the Seahawks, and we're getting rid of Russell Wilson. Everyone's like, why are they like? I knew how to get rid of Russell Wilson. I lived with him all the time. I want to get Andy's thoughts because I know he wants to eviscerate Edmonton here. This is just the example of the dynamic comments we get on this YouTube channel. So we have Colin, kind of a joke. How many experts picked Montreal? Winnipeg has revenge on their mind. Winnipeg's 13-7 at home. Can't take anyone seriously who would pick Montreal to win. But then on the other side of the spectrum, we have comments like this from Chris. Fish orange, white, fish orange, fish white. Argo's gonna sink. So we really, it's the angel and devil here of the two different types of comments we have on here. Chris, love you to death. Here we go. Let's go, BC. Appreciate that. Andy, I know you've been long silenced about sharing your tongue slashing at Chris Jones and all of that. What do you think here? Because I think we have the Saskatchewan-Edmonton matchup. From what I've been told and what I've seen, Saskatchewan is just going to be complete duty this year. Edmonton's got a lot going on with the Trey Ford dilemma and all of that. Andy, what do you think about all this?
Saskatchewan really interested me because of the new regime. Obviously, Corey Mace coming in to much camaraderie, a lot of fanfare, a lot of people who really believe in him turning around the culture.
The best signing that was in the history of all signings in the CFL is what I heard.
I know. The hype is to the moon, but that's how it goes in Saskatchewan land. But look, I actually do believe that the Rough Riders are going to make the playoffs this year. And the reason why is because of their new regime. They finished terribly down the stretch 2 years in a row. I actually think it's going to be the opposite for this team this year. I actually think they're going to start off slow and they're going to figure it out as the second back half of the season starts to unfold. And as Corey Mace starts to realize what mistakes he's making in the coaching game. It's his first job as the head coach, and you're going to make mistakes. You're going to make errors. I do believe in his ability to assess and be able to analyze his mistakes, and I do think he's going to be able to do so on the back half of the schedule. As far as Edmonton goes, I just think they're going to bottom out completely. This team, I really do not believe in this roster. I just don't. I don't like their defense. I don't like their depth. I don't like the fact that they signed 2 billion quarterbacks in the offseason and they can't seem to choose which one to be as their third or fourth starters or third stringers. Look, I don't understand. I like McLeod Bethel-Thompson as a player. I do not understand the idea of giving him that much cap space that you could have allocated to other positions. It's not just the fact that Trey Ford isn't starting. It's the fact that you decided to give money to MBT when you could have allocated it to other roster spots that, quite frankly, need to be addressed. Also, you lost Jake Serezna, who was a standout defensive player on that team last year. I just don't believe in Edmonton. I think they're going to bottom out, and Chris Jones is going to be getting the pink slip here in a few months. But Sorry, I just had to get that all off my chest. I've been waiting an entire offseason to say that, but I can't stand it. It drives me nuts. And this is as someone who is going to Edmonton next month, by the way. I just wanted to let you know I am going to an Edmonton game. And if Trey Ford is not starting by the time I get there at the end of July, so help me.
Tim,
going
what's your
down.
thoughts on this? Yeah, let's get Tim and then Cliffy. Tim, because we've been like, we are all. I just will never remember last season, like preseason. I'm like, I want to get Trey Ford on the show. He's going to start at Edmonton. I'm interviewing Trey Ford. He's on his phone, bright, smiley, blue skies. And it was just the weirdest damn season for him. Tim, are you, because we love McLeod, right? We love McLeod. They've tracked all this stuff. He's been in the USFL back now. What do you make of this Edmonton stuff, Tim?
Yeah, I mean, it is true. Edmonton did bring in a hell of a lot of quarterbacks at camp, and some of you bring in 7. How do you expect you're going to cut? You're going to cut 4. I mean, it's funny that the other Malik Henry, by the way, which they had brought in, that was in the CFL. He was a guy who was playing in the IFL. Evan knows who I'm talking about. I ended up signing with the Albany Firebirds. But some of these guys never get a chance. I mean, but you know what? We've seen before where teams have brought in guys who they think they're the be all end all. They pay them money, whatever they can to make sure that they stay in the city and stuff like that. And then they total crap out. So is that going to be the case with MBT? I don't know, but I don't think, I don't think Edmonton's going to be as bad, I think, as Andy wants them to be. But
I don't know if he wants them to be bad. I think we like Edmonton.
And City has suffered enough, Tim. I don't want them to lose at home. I really don't.
I mean, I would say is that, I mean, I was very surprised you didn't say Saskatchewan was going to make the playoffs because of their obsidian uniforms. But I mean, but I think, following, seeing what they're doing in Edmonton and stuff like that. I mean, it's obviously Coach Jones is getting a really, really long leash. I mean, a really long leash, but you can't take away that Trey Ford he's like a Madden cheat code. I mean, we saw him what he did last year versus the Alouettes when Cliff and I were there at Commonwealth. It depends on how well MBT plays with this team. I mean, if him and Gino really do well together, yeah, unfortunately, I think MBT will probably be starting by the time. He'll still be starting when you get there. So
I'm already putting bets in it.
Well, I mean, yes, and this leash that Chris Jones has had, and I think right, part of that was the salary cap caught him with like the coaching and all that kind of stuff. Vincent has a question here about 10th teams. I have a funny anecdote on that, but we'll finish this conversation really quick. Cliffy, thoughts? Because I knew you had some things to say about Edmonton, and you can throw Saskatchewan in there as well if you want.
Yeah, I think what Saskatchewan did, I find very reminiscent of what Montreal did last year. Bring in a new head coach, change the culture, if you will, get a new mindset and a new work ethic. It was sorely needed in Saskatchewan. Like they just about hit rock bottom as far as I was concerned. The fact that they, for 2 seasons in a row, they lost their last 6 games of the season. After the Labor Day Classic, they dropped off the face of the earth. Not once, but
7.
twice. 7.
Yeah.
My mistakes. But still, Saskatchewan was nowhere to be found. They had to get rid of Craig Dickinson. Corey Mace, we know what he can do. It's not going to happen overnight, though. And it's easy to look at what Montreal did with Jason Moss, and people had no faith in him whatsoever, and look what he was able to accomplish. Whereas everybody has all the faith in the world in Corey Mace. And let's hope that's just not, them pumping themselves up too much, because you're going to have to give this time. I mean, I think he will be very successful as head coach of the Rough Riders, but it's not going to happen overnight. Like, that culture change is going to take some time. I think somebody wearing green is going to make the playoffs in the West this year. I just don't know if it's going to be Edmonton or Saskatchewan, just simply on the simple fact that Winnipeg, BC, those are the top 2 teams in the West. As I said, Calgary, I just don't have enough faith that they're going to get it all together. So somebody wearing green is going to make the playoffs. I just don't know of the 2. And I look at the Edmonton situation, and I'm baffled, really. Like, I really thought Trey Ford, he's going to take his lumps. He had a lot of growing pains last year, but okay, give him the opportunity to see what you can truly do. And then all of a sudden you bring in MBT, and that's got to throw him off a little bit. And, there's almost no faith at that point in your management, in your coaching staff, because, to go from being the man to all of a sudden being the second man, that's not a good feeling. And simply put, I mean, Edmonton, if they can get it together, I mean, they've got the potential to do something. They got potential to at least be competitive, but I don't know. I think it's going to be a really interesting battle for third, if you will, in the West this year.
Doesn't that sound familiar, by the way, Cliff? Being the man and then also not being not the man, kind of something similar that the Alouettes went through a few years back with a certain quarterback and VA actually who went through it. So.
Well, and I mean, McLeod's certainly been through that as well, where it's like, were you with the Argos, but we're not really, you're kind of the main guy. I had a funny, so I just, where is this saved here? I had this to show to Dorothy, but this just reminded me of this with Tim correcting everybody on the stream here. It said, for the last 28 years, all you've done is find mistakes in everything I say. And she says 29 years. So that's a little bit of Tim here. But because, and I want to get Evan's thoughts on this, because we had Dave Campbell on here talking Edmonton. I want to talk to the jerseys too. I have those pulled up because that's interesting. But because Evan, because Dave was saying, even if McLeod comes in and he's like the coolest guy and okay, let's get to work and let's do all this stuff, you're still kicking Trey Ford. You're kicking that can down the road. Now he's approaching the end of his rookie deal. Like, even if it's not confidence aside, that he's losing these valuable team one reps. Like, what do you make of the situation? Because McLeod could come in as the coolest guy in the world. That still doesn't remedy, it's still not his fault. It still could not be a great situation.
Yeah, it's a difficult situation, no doubt. And I think, Edmonton signing MBT, it's a win now situation. The reality is, this is kind of the make or break year there, and Edmonton more than I think. Yeah, Ottawa's in that category too, but I think Edmonton really more than any other team has struggled mightily. And I remember last year how grim things looked when, I think it was Taylor Cornelius at quarterback, and they still hadn't broken the home losing streak. And it's tough, and it's certainly a decision to be made to bring in a guy like MBT and put a lot of money in that direction. And as someone who values player development, I look at Trey Ford, and it's tough because you want to give that guy an opportunity. But at the same time, I think some people are very quick to overlook Trey Ford's growing pains last year. And again, does that mean that he can't be a starter? No. I mean, I think he has starting potential, but they just had to make a decision on, whether now was the right time to start him or if they wanted to bring somebody else in and kind of, extend things a bit. But the reality is, I'm more interested to see what happens to Trey Ford after this season, because now that you've brought in MBT, that's already a big enough commitment. I'm more interested, I think, in his future, whether he stays at Edmonton or if there's, a coaching change or, we'll see what happens. There's a lot of different directions that could go that I can't predict. But, yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens to Edmonton. Personally, I do think they will win this game against Saskatchewan. I liked what Cliffy, you said, and Andy about, it taking time in Saskatchewan, but I think that they've laid a very good foundation. I still have some questions about Trevor Harris and his health and his age. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Trevor Harris is actually a year older than his new head coach. So
he's older than I am. I'm old. I am an old man.
Yeah. Trevor Harris has been around for a long time because I'm very young, younger than everyone that's on here right now. And when Trevor Harris started playing in the Canadian Football League, I was probably still in elementary school. So, that really puts things into perspective. But no, I think Saskatchewan, they definitely have a bright future. I believe in Corey Mace. I've heard great things about him. Edmonton is still a wild card to me, but I'm not going to count them out yet. I actually like a lot of the pieces that they have. I just think it, comes down to certain strategies. And again, we'll see what happens. But I do like them in this game against the Rough Riders, just because, again, your first game with a new staff and a new everything, it's going to be a bit different without a doubt. So.
By the way, the CFL notes game notes came out for the game we're just talking about.
Yeah.
MBT is only 24 and 23 in his career.
Just like Trevor Harris, like a very 50-50 quarterback.
Yeah.
Oh,
Interesting.
Let's get one more to Hussey here, because I know he needs to hop off in a second. Talking about because it's like we were talking similarly to Bo Levi Mitchell last year. Too many acronyms here. Similar to Bo Levi last year with where they're like, Hamilton, we're in a win now. We got to go do all this stuff. And Edmonton now with this, was Edmonton. I don't know if Edmonton was a quarterback away. Like you see all these, like, well, we just need to have like. I don't think Edmonton is an MVP away from winning. So would you dump all that? Like, curious your thoughts with McLeod as it relates to what we've already seen with Bo Levi the last season.
Well, I think that this is one desperate coaching staff, and they know that, they couldn't go into this season. I think their fear was if they rolled back with Trey Ford and they lost the first 3-4 weeks of the season, that, they would have been gone anyway. So I figured they wanted to, the idea is to bring in a more experienced starting quarterback. And I think that, McLeod, I was never a huge fan of him before, but the previous couple of years in Toronto, as well as his experience in the USFL, has really given me confidence in him. But my concern is more so their defense. I think their defense is going to be probably the worst in the CFL this season. I think that you lose Jake Serezna, but also AC Leonard. That's, I believe, 24 sacks from last year going out the door. So I think that's going to be a huge loss. And Chris Jones is really going to have to do a great job with that defense if they're going to have any success this season. I think that, their offense has a chance to have some success because you do have Eugene Lewis. Hopefully he's more healthy this year. And you got Curly Gittens Jr., who had a very good season with McLeod Bethel Thompson in 2022. So I'm very interested to see their offense, but I think it's definitely within the cards that they could really struggle, just like Andy's predicting.
Well, Jason, I appreciate it. We'll touch base here. We'll figure out what we're doing. Like I said, potentially we'll figure out CFL recaps, whatever. We'll figure out that marathon here. But Jason, I appreciate you making the time today to come on. We had a quick comment here from Vincent, and we'll kick Jason off here. Jason, any news on the potential 10 team? And the only reason I bring this up, and I think Evan and Andy will chuckle at this. I had a Naylor commenting, I think it was last night, texting me like, hey, do you think if the UFL doesn't stick around, do you think that, let me switch those so you guys are together. There you go. That's good. Do you think, do you think that the Battlehawks would ever join the CFL, which I can't even mind meld all that stuff here, but Tim, Cliffy, are we kind of over this 10th team? Like, I know Randy was doing the media tours like the last couple of weeks. I saw him on Rod's show talking about the elk sale. Like, I didn't even have time to try to even request anything with Randy right now, but are we over that? How do you feel here? I think Cliffy was tweeting a little bit about putting some games out on the East Coast here. What do you guys think about all this?
So that's the thing. I mean, it's always the dream, right? And dreams are nice, but I mean, if you don't have anything to back them up, then that's all they're going to be is a dream. As much as Randy Ambrosi likes to, keep tooting that horn about the 10th team, and whether it's in the Maritimes or Quebec City or even Victoria, BC, trying to get a 10th team somewhere in the league. Yes, it would be absolutely fantastic. But I mean, if you don't even have any solid plans to build a stadium anywhere, like a real CFL stadium, especially in the Maritimes, then forget it. Like I've said numerous times, at least if you get started in Moncton, they do have a stadium there that you can use on a temporary basis, but you got to have a solid plan in place. And ultimately it seems like Halifax is the place you have to build that stadium. And if you can't get municipal, provincial, or federal government involved, and if they're not interested in that, if the townspeople, the taxpayers are not interested in that too, then you can bleed all you want about having, wanting to have that 10th team. But until those factors finally come to fruition, that's all you're doing is dreaming. And quite frankly, it's getting tiresome. Like, yeah, it's cool to have Touchdown Atlantic, and of course, it's going to sell out because the Riders are coming into town, and everybody loves watching the Riders play and all that jazz. But you're still not really developing anything, any sort of a fan base or any sort of a want or desire to have that 10th team in place. It's all well and good to have Rider fans come to the Maritimes and support them, but do the people in that area really want a team? And there's nothing I've seen so far that leads me to believe that, yes, they absolutely want to have a Canadian Football League team. Yeah,
Tim, I'm kind of over that. What do you think?
It's been the biggest question, and it's dare we call it an elephant in the room or the elephant in the league since 1982. The Schooners were originally announced then. I just feel bad for them out east, because it is just so gorgeous out there. Football aside too, but I mean, it's just so beautiful out in that part of the country. And I really think with the CFL shifting over to the Pacific Coast this year, I think it kind of it's trying to maybe get them out of the spotlight a little bit. Randy has other stuff to talk about. The potential new ownership for Edmonton and the Jonas Brothers and stuff like that. But I would love to see a 10th team. I just think we just need to stop talking about the 10th team because you know what? I think many people have said it's like either get it done or just drop it. Choose a spot, see if you can build a stadium or to have access to another stadium itself. I'd love to have 10 teams. It would get rid of, the weird bye weeks and stuff like that and everything and the weird scheduling, but I would love to see it happen. The funny thing is it's been around since 82 and we're still talking about it.
Yeah. Andy, thoughts on this? I wanted to pull back, I guess I had the comment here, but just like, it feels a little UFL-y here. Like, well, if we have someone and they want to do it and they want to put up the money and like, but we really want to do it. Like, it just doesn't feel like there's any proactive whatever here. Like Tim said, especially doing the Touchdown Pacific this year. Okay. So we're taking that out of the spotlight. So then we get like, Andy, what do you make of this? Cause when we started this, it's like, expansion and adding teams and all that. But every year, like I saw Randy on Rod's show and it's like, it's the same thing every time. Like I'm kind of getting tired of it.
Well, 2 points. First of all, tell Dave that it's not 1995 anymore because the Canadians are not storming the border into America anytime soon. I don't think St. Louis even knows what a Canadian football is. I'm just going to say that right now. Sorry. Second of all, to Tim's point, I don't know if it's an elephant in the room as much as it is a spider in the corner. Like, I can ignore it. As long as it doesn't come and bite me, I think I'm going to be fine. So I think for me, it's like I don't really see it happening anytime soon. Now, I'm also the kind of guy that would just say, look, go play in the parking lot of a Tim Hortons and we'll figure this out. But I also understand the reality of, yes, the infrastructure is just not being built because the cities don't want to put in the resources to do that. Unless a lucrative owner comes in and decides to put in all that infrastructure himself, I don't think it's going to really manifest itself. Maybe I'm in the minority of this, but I actually would prefer if they did have a 10th team to have all 3 bye weeks. I do like the idea of having extended rest for these players. It's something that I wish the NFL would just have 2 bye weeks, considering they're thinking about going to 18 games and having the exact same number as the CFL, and yet they're getting away with 1, which to me just seems criminal. But I do think that the idea of putting them in an area like Quebec City sounds cool on paper, but again, it's just not manifesting itself. And if it's just talking itself in circles, I don't know when it resolves itself. Do you think about putting a team? I know this sounds absolutely insane, but do you think about putting a team in maybe the same province where you already have a team? I know, again, that seems like a hard idea to sell to your audience, but I don't know where else they're going to go because they just keep talking themselves in circles. So I don't have an answer. I wish I did. I am just like you. Reed and Evan and I can also attest to this just from the Americans' perspective, from the UFL perspective. All we hear about is expansion. And for us, it's very tiring because, and I know it's different circumstances because it's a league that hasn't been around as long, obviously. But at some point, it's just kind of like, we'd rather just focus on the markets that are around and not the what ifs, because the what ifs can just go on into perpetuity.
Evan, anything to add to this?
Yeah, I think, expansion talk gets overused a lot. And look, it would be cool to have a team in Halifax, no doubt, or, maybe somewhere in New Brunswick or Quebec City. There's been a lot of ideas that are floated around. But again, Andy brought up, like, from the UFL or American perspective, and really any pro league, like, expansion talk is exciting, when you're not on, like, the operations side of things. But the reality is, like, a league like the CFL, there's a lot of things, that I think the league, has to worry about before a 10th team is added. And again, the 10th team is what you say, that gets people excited. It's like a marketing thing. But in reality, there's a bunch of little things. Like the one thing that really bothers me, the stats in the CFL, last year it was all over the place. And this year, from what I saw in the preseason, they still had to make some corrections. So, things like that, the little things, if you got to worry about getting those right first before, you add another team somewhere. Although, again, the best part about expansion, if it does happen, and if they can do it the right way, is from the player perspective, a lot more opportunities, a ton more roster spots open up, and it's more competition and more jobs, and that's always good to see. So.
Yeah, I agree with all of that, and it's kind of words until it's action. The CFL, but yeah, like they were even laughing, like, oh, like Randy, like, oh yeah, the stats are going to be better this year. It's like, okay, that was like a major thing last year. I don't really know if we need to laugh that off. I have a tweet here, Tim, known CFL content creator here. I wanted to make sure we talk about here. Maybe you heard of him, Tim Capper here, talking about the CFL on CTV. We're talking Grey Cup, kind of all this stuff. I want to make sure we touch on this today, Tim. What? Because right in the States here, we've got the CFL Plus smorgasbord with the CBS Sports Network. Right, that's kind of how we're going to consume. How big is it a deal here that the CFL is going to be on CTV?
Well, this is huge. And just for some context, for those who don't know, right now it is on, and CTV is owned by Bell. TSN is owned by Bell. So they're actually a part of the whole family. It's just that there's been no CFL action, no CFL games on the CTV network in 38 years. So they stopped. They had a contract back in the late 80s, and then which they were doing simulcast with the Canadian Broadcast Network company. So this is a big thing. This is like having your games on ABC and ESPN. One's over the air for free. Free these days, free, and something where you have to pay for. So that's kind of like what it is for us here in Canada with this thing. And we've been talking about this. I think Cliff, you and I have talked about it for years. We've openly talked about it. And many CFL fans have been talking about this too. Is that the way sports are these days, in order to gain new fans, you need to be able to show them the game, that they don't have to go to TSN all the time or CFL Plus to be able to watch a game. If you could have it on regular television, or if you're changing the channels and you come across a CFL game, and especially as they're setting it up now, it's a 7-week regular season schedule starting in September. It's fantastic. It's a great idea. A lot of these places, may need to, if they can see one game, they like it. Then they can, if they have a hometown team and they go see a game in person, they may have, the team may is going to get more revenue, maybe a new season ticket holder, et cetera, et cetera. This thing's huge. It's something that should have been done for years. And supposedly the offer has been available for years. Bell and CTV has said, yeah, well, come on, let's do this. But for some reason, the trigger was not pulled. But finally, I guess the way that the CFL set the schedule up for Saturday afternoons worked perfectly, because all it just is a minor change from a 4 p.m. game to a 3 p.m. game. So it's going to be, and again, and I know Cliff and I lamented on this last year, is that not having the Grey Cup on broadcast TV for the first time in who knows how long. Now it's going to be not only on TSN, it's also going to be on CTV. Over the air for free for people to watch. So it's kind of like what they did with the Super Bowl here in Canada, where it's going to be simulcast between TSN and CTV. So it's big.
Well, it's huge. And that's because we talk about this, with the UFL, and this season we've seen the ratings get better with the things on Fox and ABC, like you said, where people can kind of stumble upon it. Because now, and not that, like the ESPN deal, I guess was better in America, because at least if you were on the app, you could kind of see, and okay, we click on that. But now, like, you're never stumbling across CFL at all now on CBS Sports Network. Like, that's never happening ever, right? It's great if you have that and people are asking in the chat, like, how do we do with all that kind of stuff? But you're never stumbling upon it where it is, and obviously on the CFL Plus as well. So like maybe it's a wider range, and that's why I've kind of been against this whole, where they said last year, well, this is a better deal for you American viewers. Like, well, no, I'm in America. I can tell you it's ostensibly not a better deal than it was before, but because no one's stumbling upon it. I think at least with this, like you're saying with the Grey Cup, especially in the playoff games, like let's give this on, because we hear that at least the last 3 years we've done this. Like, well, the ratings are great, but think if the ratings were on and you didn't have to be on whatever. Cliffy, you co-signed this big deal.
Oh, it is definitely big, especially when you make that comparison to, say, ESPN versus ABC. That visibility alone is going to make a big difference. And this is something that CFL fans every year at the State of the League address with the commissioner, that's one of the things they keep talking about. Why don't you put the Grey Cup on CTV? Why don't you why do we have to subscribe to a cable package in order to watch the championship game? Why is this not on a national network that is over the air and accessible to just about everybody? Because CTV does have an app too that you could watch and stream the game from as well if you're going that route, if you're a cord cutter. So yeah, it's big in that sense. And as far as I'm concerned, especially with the NFL being so dominant on CTV up here, like the fact that you could watch so many NFL games on Grey Cup weekend and not not watch the Grey Cup itself. Like, how are you supposed to grow the game in a lot of people's eyes if you can't even have the championship game available for someone to watch, whether it's on a traditional TV or on their computer, tablet, what have you? How are you streaming? To not have that game on there just is baffling, to tell you the truth.
Andy, let's get you on here. Let's talk a little football now. I want to talk through uniforms here, but I don't want to have too much. I want to make sure we break it up here with this. Chris, a fellow Sea Dragon fan, RIP all this, but Chris, first time covering, following the league. We're gonna have, presumably, hopefully, some people following. Andy, who's the team to watch this year? Who do you have I mean, obviously we have the favorites. We talked to Montreal, all of that, but like, who are you watching? Christina's calling the Argos America's team, which is a complete lie. That Christina, you should know better about that. That's America's team, the BC Lions. But Andy, who's your sleeper team this year? Who are you going to be watching?
Like I said, you know what? Maybe I'm just somebody who has too much faith in them, but I actually do like the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Like I said, I believe in what Corey Mason's doing. I think it's going to take some time for that roster to gel. I really like AJ Ouellette on that team. I think he's going to be great for Trevor Harris. I really believe that they're going to figure it out, and their defense is going to be better, and that team's going to be better overall. I think that's a sleeper team to really look for. I think Montreal is going to be good again. I really do. I think they're going to figure out how to get enough from their defense, which they always do, and they're going to be able to eke by on offense. I'm really curious, for me, is to see if Cody Fajardo can take that next step. He did in the Grey Cup. He had a transcendent performance. Can he do that again in a full season? That's really my question going forward. But I'm actually looking forward to watching the Montreal Alouettes this season.
Evan, same question for you, and then we'll do the circle around. But who are you excited to see this year? I think Andy's battery died. We'll get him back on. He had mentioned that. Hey, good timing with that. Evan, who are you watching this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we mentioned it at the top of the show, but BC, whether there's pressure there or not, I think this is the year where they should make the jump, and especially if Winnipeg, maybe does slip a bit. And personally, I think Winnipeg will win the game tonight. I know, Tim, be mad at me, but I don't know. That's just my opinion based on some of the research that I've done. Now, Winnipeg, like the rest of the season, we'll see. I mean, they've been the Kings of the West for a while now, and I just feel like I have this gut feeling, I guess, that this is the year that BC really pulls it together and makes the push all the way. And of course, if they can get past that West final game and into the Grey Cup, they'll be hosting it this year. So again, it's a perfect recipe of things, and I think that's a team that you really need to keep an eye on, because again, all the things that we've mentioned, it's just, this has been building now for so many years, and on top of just the players and the culture, I mean, they've got great ownership. I mean, you look at that home opener that they're going to have with 50 Cent, it's going to be sold out. That's crazy. I mean, that's I think certain teams maybe in the UFL would dream of that. Maybe the UFL as a whole, really. But anyway, I know that's a different thing, different conversation for another time. But yeah, I mean, that's the team that I'm really excited to watch, and the team that I have watched, for a number of years now. And, hopefully this year they can raise the cup.
Yeah, just for new listeners on here, it is a little, and I mean, obviously we live and die through every week of the CFL, but it is a little bit of a marathon, and it is, at least from what I've learned, it's a little bit of like, you kind of know the top 4 or 5 teams going in, and then, like I said, we kind of knew BC Lions, and I knew when they weren't going to get the first spot in the division, okay, they're going to have to go into Winnipeg, and then it really all comes down to, it's 21 weeks or whatever, all comes down to that one game. Tim, I want to get your thoughts, and then we'll get Cliffy as well. We're talking, Mar Doman and, 50 Cent and all of that, which everything's out. Like I think 50 Cent, like maybe I'm too old. I don't know. I feel like I'm out of the demos of 50 Cent and Jonas Brothers. Somehow I'm kind of like not in either one of those demographics. But Tim, like, how's the new Alouettes ownership going here? We've seen a lot of strides with the Lions. How do you view kind of the new regime in the Alouettes?
Oh, it's been night and day once Pierre Carpelito became the owner of the Alouettes. And it started last year. I mean, that really just started the whole new chapter of the franchise itself. He was able to put the money into the team, and finally our GM, Danny Machocha, was able to do what he needed to do in order to get the players to do what they did last year. And this year, it's even more. I mean, they've redone some stuff there in stadium when it comes to signage, some different things to the stadium itself with better lighting. They're putting in a new video board over at Percival Molson Stadium. I think that now knowing that they have the money available to them, I think it's taken a lot of pressure off of Danny Machocha and saying, listen, we can sign these guys for multiple years. We don't have to worry about, are we going to lose, like a Gino Lewis? Are we, it makes you wonder if Pierre Carpello had been around a year before, would Gino Lewis still be on the team? It really makes me wonder. But this ownership is great. The ownership is fantastic. I mean, and I can't complain. I really can't. I mean, obviously, as I said at the beginning of the show, it's the next chapter, but we'll see what happens going forward. I mean, they're doing everything they can to promote this team. I mean, I know you're going to show the uniforms coming up in a little bit. Even the Alouettes themselves have a special game coming up in August. So they're doing everything right. I think Pierre's letting the football ops do what they need to do. Mark Waitman has done a fantastic job when it comes to with the people that are behind him and getting this team getting Montreal ready for the defending Grey Cup champs for their home opener on June 20th.
Tim, were you talking about this with the wings on? I was going to pull up the Riders and the Elks. Which one is Montreal's new one that you're looking at?
It's they're going to be celebrating the 50th anniversary of the 1974 Grey Cup team in August, and that was the time of the if anybody knows the CFL and the Alouettes. No. It's now that for them it's the Delta logo. It's anybody knows the team of the 70s, the Alouettes of the 70s. They know what the Delta logo is, but they're going to be wearing. Rumors are they're going to be doing something very. I can't say it's going to be a perfect example of what the uniforms were from 74 to they left in 86, but it will. They're supposed to do something nice. Nothing's been leaked. But it's right now. It's just been Edmonton, Ottawa, and Saskatchewan that have released their uniform.
Cliffy, anything I know Andy's got a comment about the Mardoman.
Sorry. Yeah. Honestly, just not having to worry about paying bills. I think that was a big thing with Montreal, like during those lean years, was the constant turnover, the instability left, right, and center. With Pierre-Karl Pelado running this team or paying the bills essentially. And that's the thing. The bills are getting paid. So you don't have to worry about, do we have enough money to sign this player? Do we have enough money to turn the lights on in the stadium even? Like, can we pay the rent? Like, I mean, there's just silly things like this that your typical football fan doesn't think about. But as Tim and I see things behind the scenes, like this is stuff that we were concerned about. Like, can we just get a team that, can get it together and figure it out? And for the longest time, it wasn't like that. But now with this new regime in place, and you could tell they had a plan. Like, it's funny, the plan succeeded a little too quickly, I think, in some respects, because everybody expected Montreal to be terrible last year. And they ended up being pretty decent and going on to win the Grey Cup. And it's almost like, even talking with Pierre-Karl Pelado after the Grey Cup, we even said to him, like, this doesn't happen, right? You buy a team and then you win the Grey Cup that year. And he's even like, I don't know what to do now. Like, what do you do once you've climbed the mountain?
Get out. Yeah, you got so
now maybe that's it. Like, maybe once you win the Grey Cup, you win another one. But then what do you do after that? So I mean, it's a good problem to have. I think. Now I think Montrealers and Quebecers, everybody who supports the Alouettes now, they don't have to be looking over their shoulder wondering when the next shoe is going to drop. When is so-and-so going to leave in free agency because he's not getting the playing time or he's just not happy with how much is being paid or anything like that. Like, it was so important for this team to really get their core settled. Make sure that the big players, the ones that helped this team win the Grey Cup, make sure they're here for 2024, 2025 and beyond. And having a billionaire's money to be able to ensure that these things are going to happen, to make sure those contracts do get signed, make sure the coaching staff does stay in place for the next 2, 3, 4 years. To finally have that stability right now for the Montreal Alouettes is it's so nice. It brings me back to like the late 90s, early 2000s when the team came in. They were the model franchise for the Canadian Football League. And then they just lost their way. but now I feel like they've regained that form. They've found themselves again. And if you're an Alouettes fan, you couldn't be happier with the direction this team is going in right now.
Let's get Andy real quick. I know Evan, I think, has to hop off here soon. If you guys, Andy and I, we'll go a few more minutes here, get closer to the kickoff, and then we're not going to do this crazy anything today. But Andy, anything else you want to say on the Mar?
Well, I just wanted to say I completely agree with what Tim and Cliffy said. I appreciate your perspectives, especially your historical perspectives on what's gone on with the ownership model. I mean, me and Reed have had more of our fun with following the antics of someone like Gary Stern, which is a whole nother universe now. It seems like a million
Seems like
years
a
ago,
different time, yeah.
Boy,
It really does.
Seems like a separate timeline, really does. But I mean, that's the wonderful thing that I want to say about this, and also about Amar Doman, is that you need these kinds of individual owners or individual efforts to be made in a 9-team league. You know, in the NFL, there's 32 teams. If one is bad, everyone else kind of points and laughs at them and said, figure it out. But in a 9-team league, when there's smaller margin for error, when one franchise is struggling maybe financially, it really shows. I think Edmonton's going through that right now, and Edmonton's going to have a gigantic change of face here soon once they change ownership. Obviously, going from community to single ownership, that's going to have to change the franchise for the better. And that's why I think it's really interesting, at least for Montreal, that the fact that they were able to transition from coach to coach to coach, quarterback to quarterback in these last few years. They still made the playoffs. They almost had an unprecedented amount of success despite everything that was going on around them. I mean, for them to go from Kari Jones to Danny Machocha to Jason Moss, and going from Vernon Adams Jr. to Trevor Harris to Cody Fajardo, and still continue to make the playoffs, I think is a testament to them. That's really incredible that they were able to still do that and to just have this amount of success despite all those mitigating factors. But to specifically go back to what I was saying earlier about Amar Doman, I mean, this is a tremendous accomplishment. And to me, it's something that I think I can speak for, at least for Evan and Reed and maybe a lot of people down here. This is something that spring footballers are just clamoring for, that kind of level of sustainability and effort and ramping up attendance. I mean, to think about the idea of having 50,000 plus people in a home opener it's it seems unfathomable, and now it's going to be a reality this week, in 2 weeks. It's really incredible to think about that, and just all because Amar Doman put his money where his mouth is, and he's really pushing forward BC Place, which was cavernous for such a long time and didn't have the attendance numbers, and now it does. It's really refreshing, and it's almost invigorating to see and thinking this can be done. It's not just something that we talk about happening. It is happening. It's something that can happen, and it's happening in Montreal. It's happening in BC, and hopefully it continues to happen in more places across the CFL, and then on our end, hopefully over here too. It really just fills me with hope. It really does, and I love seeing that.
Well, it also speaks to, and we'll do a hot. Everyone, I'm going to ask for your hot take here, so just prepare that while I do my little thing here. We'll go around because I want to do uniforms before we get out, but I'm sure Evan wants to have no business of talking uniforms, so we'll let him talk football. It speaks to what is needed from an owner, right? I mean, we talk about this a lot on the UFL side, like, well, we need to get local ownership. I remember when we had the Amar Doman on, I think it was 2 years ago, and, spent half an hour, great, and this is my vision for all this stuff. And then afterward, I looked at his net worth online, and I'm like, this guy's worth over $500 million. Like, what the hell is he doing talking on this stupid podcast for half an hour? And I think it puts in, the work that he's done and the time and energy, like, that's what you need from these local team ownerships. It's not just, we're going to buy this, the Michigan Panthers, they average 7,000 fans, and we're going to put that, like, it's a cost losing for a long time, right? And the Mar is booking these guys out of pocket, and we're getting LL Cool J and 50 Cent, kind of all that stuff. A ton of work going into all that. So I just think that can't be understated. Like, the UFL just needs to find people to own teams. Like, it's really hard. Look at the CFL now. We're trying to, we want Edmonton to go private, and obviously Montreal is taken care of right now, and BC. But, there's been time. I mean, you guys know way better than we do, times of instability for all these franchises and going away and coming back. Evan, I want to get your hot football take on here before we get out. We'll do the round table, and then if anyone needs to go, I want to talk uniforms before we get out. But hot football take this season. What do you got, Evan?
I mean, CFL wise, I don't know. I don't know
CFL wise.
Yeah, I mean, my mind goes to a lot of different places because I look at a lot of leagues and a lot of people. But hot takes, man, I don't know. I mean, I haven't honestly thought of a lot of them. Maybe I'm biased, obviously, but maybe Toronto, whether Chad Kelly comes back or not, maybe Toronto can still put together a 11 or 12 win season. I don't know I forget what the over under is on their wins, but it's probably around 9 or 10. I would have to imagine.
It's 9.5. Yeah.
I think people are very, Chad Kelly, I'm not going to get into that, but that was the story that everybody fixated in on the offseason. But, I think Toronto has a lot of other pieces, that people quickly overlook. And again, I think most of that is because, everyone's focused on the quarterback, Chad Kelly, who was the face of the league last year, your MOP, now he's gone. It's, what are we going to do? But I mean, if you look at the rest of that roster, and again, I mean, as someone who knows a lot about that space, I see that as a team that they shouldn't surprise a lot of people because, again, I think if they do win, above 10 games, they get to that 11 or 12 win mark and make a run in the playoffs. It'll surprise people because they weren't focused on that in the offseason. So maybe that's my hot take. I don't know how hot that really is. I'm not I don't have too many hot takes nowadays because I got to keep things more professional. But, that's we'll settle for that, I think.
Tim, what do you got here? Alouettes come out. Cody has forgotten how to throw a football. No, what's your hot takes here, Tim?
Sean Lemon will play more games in the regular season than Chad Kelly.
Yeah, well, actually, I did have that bookmarked here. We didn't have time to talk about it, but I do have Dave's tweet here about how he is representing himself in the arbitration. Like, bold strategy, Cotton. That is interesting to see how that says.
He's literally betting on himself.
Literally.
Literally.
I like that. Cliffy, what do you got?
All right, I'm gonna say I'll do an Alouettes one, and I'll even do a league-wide one as well. I think Tyson Philpott leads the league in receiving. I think you watch him go off this year. I think it's been there. He's had injury problems last year. That's why he didn't put on. But again, he built that momentum towards the end of the season and all the way in through the playoffs and to the Grey Cup, to making that Grey Cup winning catch. I think he takes that momentum and he truly, truly goes off this year. And as I said earlier, I think a team wearing green is going to make the playoffs in the West. I still don't know which one. But, I mean, if you put a gun to my head and force me to choose, I'd probably say Saskatchewan by the slimmest of margins. But I definitely think this is the year, though, where you see, like, Calgary I just don't have the faith. And I'm a huge Matthew Schultz guy, and I think he'll end up taking over the reins from Jake Mayer, believe it or not. But I just don't see enough horses, pardon the pun, on that Calgary team to really make something happen. In the East, I think Ottawa's going to be improved, but they too. I mean, just based on what we saw in the preseason from them, it's hit or miss. I mean, I think if their stars show up to play, they'll do good, but I just don't see them dominating. I don't see them coming out of the gate hot and just bursting through everybody. I definitely think Montreal. This is their division to lose, quite frankly. I think Chad Kelly stuff aside with Toronto's going to be competitive. They're going to do decent. But again, I think this is a wide open division for the Alouettes to, I won't say dominate, but they're going to do extremely well in. And honestly, all of this is going to make for a very fun season. And I am jazzed right now for Grey Cup. Like, to get out to Vancouver and be a part of that, I'm excited. Whether the Alouettes are in it or not, if they're in it, great. If they're not, oh well. I still think Grey Cup's going to be absolutely outstanding because this season as a whole has the potential to be really, really outstanding this year.
Yeah, Cliffy, we're bringing the whole West Coast contingent out. So you guys come hang out. We'll do all this stuff here. We'll hang out at BC Place. Andy, what do you got here? And you're muted. Make sure you're back up. There you go.
I got 3, actually.
There you go.
3 specific ones. My first one, I think that Trevor Harris is going to lead the league in passing. He's going to be completely healthy to lead the league in passing. Yep, I said it. That is
a hot take.
That is a hot take.
That's my hot take.
Andy, dump water on your head.
And I think Samuel Elmelis catches double-digit touchdowns and helps them in that mission. I really believe in him. My second one is a little bit more dour. I think Calgary misses the playoffs, and I think Dave Dickinson's going to be looking for a new job at the end of the season. That's my second one. That's also another one. My third one, it's not just because of the gentlemen who are on the show. I think the Alouettes go back to the Grey Cup. I think they take it. I I like Toronto a lot. I believe in Ryan Dinwiddie, but there's something about them playing Montreal in the playoffs that doesn't sit well with me. And if they don't have Chad Kelly, I definitely don't feel good about it. Although you'd probably argue that you do want to see Chad Kelly again, honestly. But
Well, we want to see last year's Chad Kelly play.
Yeah, you want to see that one game Chad Kelly again. That's my hot take. I do think BC is going to be in it, but from the East, I don't believe in Ottawa. I don't believe in Hamilton. Sorry, Jason. And Toronto, I will say the one thing I'll say about Toronto that concerns me real quick. They have a great offensive line. They cut all their offensive line backups in the preseason. If they get injuries on the offensive line, they're in trouble, and that really concerns me. I understand. I know they have a lot of talent. I know one of their biggest player personnel guys, Vince McGree, moved on to the Buffalo Bills, and I think that's going to show because I'm really worried about their ability to restock the coverage. So those are my three really biggest hot takes. So Trevor Harris, Dave Dickinson, and Montreal. Those are my three big ones.
I think if you listen carefully, I think Chad Kelly just threw another interception. So I think I just heard that call come down. I got a couple here. First off, a hot take. I think Chad Kelly will play more games under center than Trevor Harris does for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. I think Harris is going to get blown up. I think Harris is going out. I completely disagree 100% with Andy's take on that. I think Trevor makes it half through the season. I think he's done. Also, I think McLeod Bethel-Thompson's going to be duty. I think that he's going to – I talked with Dave, and I don't think at least Trey can run and do all those things. I know McLeod can get the ball out quick, and that's what they want, make decisions. I think he's going to get blown up. I think I don't wish him to be hurt, but I think that is not going to work out. I think he's going to be duty. My bold take, and this is not what I want. I think BC misses out. I want BC versus the Alouettes. I've seen this before. BC is not made for the cold weather, getting in there, the team. And we'll see this year, the last couple of years, they're not built tough that way. They're not built to come in and play. And okay, yeah, we can host Winnipeg, come in. Winnipeg's going to run the ball down your throat like they do all the time. I have, until I see otherwise, not from an on the field, but there's a locker room disconnect. And I don't know if Rick Campbell's too, like I'm the buddy coach and kind of all that. Wow, we'll wash this and forget about it. Like, I don't know. I saw them fall apart last year. I saw them, like I said, at the top get really high on their supply. And, I see that not working out for disappointment of all. Tim, anything crazy there?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it's new season. Who knows what the hell is going to happen? I mean, I don't know. No.
Evan's Wi-Fi cut out, so that's fine. Let's talk real quick here. If you guys got to go, whatever. I want to just touch on these. Are you guys good for 5 more minutes to go through this? Or you want to get out and get prepped for the game?
Oh, okay.
Go for it.
All right, so let's do this. So this, I liked I was talking with, I think it was Jim Mullen, how I like the Elks uniforms. They have this new one out now. It's got the shiny shoulder. I hate this new uniform. What do we think of this? Andy, you first.
Yeah, this blend is strange. Now it's obviously giving me a lot of vibes as a Oregon Duck alum. It gives me a lot of vibes of some of those jerseys. I mean, I don't know. There's something about the steely pads on the shoulders that just doesn't really fit to me. I don't know why, but it doesn't seem emblematic of Edmonton. Now maybe I'll get a better idea of the city when I go visit it myself, and perhaps maybe I'll change my mind then. But yeah, I'm not crazy about this. And the numbers, the fonts for the name and the numbers are a little strange. I'm not feeling this either, but those shoulder pads are just strange, especially with the stripes going in between the framing too. It's a little weird.
Tim, I'm trying to find, because I want to find the photo of the previous ones I thought were pretty nice. So Tim, what do you think about this?
Yeah, the patch that you can't see that's on the side, I really like. I was expecting a little bit more. I mean, for those who don't know, it's Edmonton's 75th anniversary as a football club.
Yeah, let me get the patch here.
But the shoulder pads themselves, they're like triangles. They're triangles that quote unquote represent the forests of northern Alberta. It's just okay. I mean, I'm okay with the numbers themselves. I know it's funny. We know quite a few Elks fans who really hated the numbers over the past couple of years. I'm glad they, bringing back the yellow to the numbers is a nice idea. At least they won't be unreadable from the press box and on TV. But what I thought was funny, and people will see this in the next at least in the next one, I think if you're going to show Saskatchewan, is those stripes seem to be the newest big thing in the CFL. You showed the picture earlier of the Alouettes red thirds. Those also had the stripes. So do those, and so will Ottawa once you show the Ottawa one. So I think these are cool. I was going to joke and say long live the Obsidian Order. It's a unique thing, and I think if they end up going with that new logo full time, the S, I guess what would we call it? The S.
It's like
brand?
the S with the wheat. Yeah.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. The sweet,
The
sweet logo.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I think it really looks good. The one that they use now, I understand it is part of history. It is a little dated, but there's only so many times that you can use the Safeway logo. Like they did there in the back there. That's their throwback one there. But I like this look. I really like this look. I want to see what it looks like in real person or on TV, because obviously, as we know, just talk to Major League Baseball, things can look a little bit different under the lights. So under camera lights. So I think it looks good.
And these are all alt jerseys, right?
Mhm.
In terms of like, this will be like they'll roll out the third string,
Right,
one,
except for
whatever.
Ottawa.
Yeah, Ottawa's a new. Cliffy, any thoughts on these? I'll pull up the other one. I will say, I don't know how the heck they got Ice Cube to be a part of this, but I love that video where he's like, damn, that's even a hard name, like Red Blacks. Like I thought he's like, that's based on the lumberjack, right? The Northern Canadian woods. I don't know if he knows all that, but Cliffy, what do you think of this? Because I think this was a cool look for the Red Blacks too, because we got a lot of anniversaries and things going on, right?
Yeah, they're going for the retro vibes here of like the Ottawa Rough Riders from back in the day, and
Yeah.
I mean it's nice, it's okay. I mean it's funny, like you talk about Red Blacks. Either the uniform's got to be predominantly black or predominantly red, right? Just to keep up with the name. I mean, this is not terrible. I mean, it's fine, and I know they're gonna be wearing these all season at home, with the exception of the red uniforms. There's I think 3 dates where they're wearing their red centric uniforms, but like this for a 10th anniversary look, which kind of funny to celebrate a 10th anniversary, but okay. I mean, listen, whatever gets people excited, and of course whatever sells jerseys, right? So I mean, I guess that's not bad. I will say Saskatchewan's jerseys are good in the sense that people apparently have been really clamoring for black jerseys again in Saskatchewan, and it's one of those very polarizing things. People either love those retro black jerseys or they absolutely hate them. There's no in between. I think this is a great compromise because it's a very dark green, but it still has kind of that black effect. So if the Riders want to do a blackout game like they normally do, you could wear these and no problem. Like it would work. It would blend in practically, even though it's not black per se. It's still a very, very dark green. And I gotta say, especially what Tim was talking about with that new wheat logo, the sweet logo, I guess we'll call it now.
Yeah, I like that.
I like that. It's part of evolution, right? Like just like the Alouettes logo has evolved over the years. This is Saskatchewan's a team that is very much rooted in history, but a team that really needs to. I don't want to say necessarily get with the times, but as I said, evolve, grow a little bit, and change. And I think you're looking towards the future. That's a futuristic looking logo that still has that classic look to it, but at the same time, you know what it is. As soon as you see that S, you see that thresh of wheat, you know that's a Saskatchewan Roughriders helmet. And Edmonton's team.
I was just joking. I'm literally looking at here to see what it costs to buy them. That's how bad I am. That's how bad a part of all this I am. Sorry, Tim. Continue.
I'm saying by the way, the things on the uniforms, the triangles, they kind of remind you what you would see on a topographical map. That's what it reminds me of.
Yeah.
When I first saw it, it's like, okay, I understand that they're going for the forest look. By the way, for the Red Blacks one, the Red Blacks with their giant name across the front kind of gives me vibes of the old Alouettes ones that they had Alouettes plastered across the front. That could be a little smaller. I mean, they can't really help it in Saskatchewan because that's a long spelling name. But I mean, yeah, make Red Blacks just a touch smaller. But other than that, I like those jerseys. It's a really nice throwback to the original Rough Riders look.
Just if we have any new, and we'll get Andy on here.
Their new helmets. Yeah, and their new helmets too. Yeah, Ottawa's new helmets.
Do I have those? Are they, what do they look like?
It's similar to the very popular throwback helmet that they wore last 2 years, where it's the current R just the art soap without the saw blade on the side, and it has those same stripes going across the
I
helmet.
see. There we go. Kind of like that. There we go.
Yeah, there it is.
Circle
Yeah.
around
Yeah.
it. I will just say, if anyone's making any decisions about teams for uniforms, I mean, the Lions now are fire. I mean, the blackout and the fog. I mean, these are hot. These are hot
Yeah.
jerseys. Andy, any thoughts on this? And then we'll get out of here. Andy, did we lose you?
I mean, I've always loved the gunmetal jerseys from the BC Lions. That's like one of my favorite kits of all time. I love those. No, I think I really like the gunmetal outfits though from BC.
Yeah, I think these are good. The more I look at this, the more I look at the Edmonton one, I think it's all right. It's kind of like snake scales. It's a little bit Tampa Bay Vipers, a little adjacent, a little bit there.
I was thinking houndstooth when I first saw it. Like it's
Yeah.
Here's the question. I mean, do I pop on the McLeod Bethel Thompson Elks jersey? That would be a bold strategy. That would be kind of cool though.
I still like to take that patch there. That's a take on a reimagining of the patch that they had originally. I think when they first became when the original Eskimos team became when they first came to be. So I kind of like that look, but yeah. And I said now, and then we'll get to see the whatever the Alouettes are going to do, and I'm sure that'll be released sometime in late July, early August.
Yeah.
Well, that'd be exciting. Andy, anything else from you before we start winding this down? 10 minutes to kick off.
No, I'm just really excited to start another season. I mean, for people who follow the league longer from me, I'm sure it's always like Christmas, just kind of restarting the league. But I really just appreciate getting more and more knowledge. I mean, Reed and I think both could say that we are still, downloading more history and more knowledge about this league every year because we're sort of playing catch up compared to you guys and everybody else who covers the CFL and has covered the CFL for so long. But I'm always excited about it, and I really look forward to it so much in June. Now, it's something for me to kind of like look to in the summer and just saying, well, there's more football on the horizon, but it's a different kind of football, and it's a history that I can start to treasure. And now that I have more perspective as far as players, coaches, previous records, things like that, it really helps me a lot. And I love that it kind of makes me feel like when I was a teenager and I was getting to know the NFL, it's like starting to it's like getting my knowledge wells adjusted every time I go back into it and start to learn about it. So I really appreciate that. And best of luck to the Alouettes. I don't know how they're going to do in the peg tonight, but it's going to be really interesting. Can't wait for this game. Great opening match.
Tim, Cliffy here with Alouettes Flighdeck podcast. Plug your guys' stuff. I know you guys do weekly everything on there. Not that I don't think anyone that's on it this way doesn't know who you guys are, but make sure you plug all that before we get out of here.
Of course. One thing I will say is after the game tonight, please make sure you check out our YouTube channel because we will be doing our post-game show, Flighdeck Live, and we'll offer up our thoughts on what we saw against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, good, bad, or other. We'll be on there and we'll talk about the game itself. And of course, we're back every week doing the podcast as well. So make sure if you're not following us, follow us, whether it's on X, Facebook, Instagram, pretty much everything Alouettes Flighdeck. You'll find us, all the major podcast platforms, YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed and hit the notification bell for that as well, because we plan to do a lot this year. I mean, we got so much done last year, but I still feel there's so much more that there is to be done. And we just want to keep, I always say, I want to take this as far as we can go and go a little further. And I think, especially now doing the live shows, has helped us get a chance to do that. We were able to go to different stadiums last year and do post-game shows live on the opposing team's field sometimes even. And that's awesome. We want to be able to keep doing that and just keep growing this channel, keep growing this podcast, and really just spreading the love, spreading the awareness, if you will, for the Montreal Alouettes. Like that's been our goal for this. And we want to keep, as I said, taking this as far as we can go and going even further. Tim?
Well, and having team presidents hop on and spoil your streams and stuff. I see you guys post all that stuff. Good stuff on that. Yeah, Tim, what else you got here? And then we'll get out of here.
Yeah, I as I said, I think it's I'll kind of echo what Cliff was just saying. I mean, if it wasn't for an idea, our partners show Flighdeck Live to the main podcast. It's as I said, we've been growing more and more and as we've seen, anything can happen during these live shows. So it's I'm just give us a chance. You may not like the Alouettes, but just give us a chance, and you'll be surprised on who we have on the show. I'm sure you'll be interested in the stories that we tell.
Well, this will be good. Like I said, like and subscribe. Hussey's channel as well. I think we'll figure out some recaps here coming next week. I don't think Evan's schedule will allow that. But we'll figure it out. Maybe Andy will hop on after he gets off his big vacations. Andy's heading to Mexico. Maybe we'll get Anthony Miller on. Anyone else? Appreciate it, guys. Enjoy. Should be fun. I'll get my stuff on here and we'll get out of here. Enjoy the game. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks.
As always, thank you for having us.
Yeah, and big show tomorrow. We got Dan Kaplan coming on. We're talking UFL playoffs. So, no rest for the wicked here. We'll see you guys next time.